if we
Yeah,
dive
sure.
in? Wonderful. All right. And thanks. Thank you all for being here. My name is Steph Jacobs. I'm one of our co-hosts for these regenerative leadership conversations, and I am just so thrilled to see you all here today. And, normally I have other partners and co-hosts who are here, and, and we're flying a little solo today, but that's fine because I've also got great support from Bonnie, who you'll see actually appears as Kathy Allen today. So welcome to Bonnie. Bonnie is Kathy's publicist and helps with all kinds of things. So welcome to the group today, Bonnie. And we do have Kathy joining us by phone. Kathy, do you just want to say a quick hi? If you're able? Nope, maybe not. Okay, and that's okay. Kathy is here and listening, and so that's great. And welcome to all of you. So excited to see you here today and to have this great conversation. As per usual, we start off with a welcome and to already give you a reminder and a heads up about our next session even. So we meet on the third Tuesday of every month. And so our next meeting will be on Tuesday, May 17th. And that is at 1 p.m. Central Time here in the US. And our conversation next time, Daniel Lassi will be back and will be leading our conversation. He has just recently reacquainted with the book Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. So if you have time to read it ahead of time, great. Otherwise, Daniel will be walking us through that book, sharing thoughts, getting us into some great discussion and reflection during that conversation. So mark your calendars for May 17th, 1 p.m. Central. All right. Well, I am just thrilled for today's conversation, though. I'm thrilled about the subject and thrilled about our presenter, Frank Uit de Weerd. Did I get that right?
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Well, Frank is joining us from the Netherlands and is the co-author of this amazing book that we're going to hear about today. So he's going to be speaking to us about systems-inspired leadership. And the subtitle for today, Essential for Future Fit Organizations. And so Frank has been joining us on these calls over the last several months and has been a fantastic contributor to this community. And then so when he volunteered to lead this conversation today, we could not pass up this opportunity. So we're very, very thrilled to have Frank share with us today. Frank, I will go ahead and start sharing your slides, and can I pass it over to you?
Yeah, thank you so much. And how wonderful, first of all, to see everyone and to be here. And thank you, Steph, for bringing so much nice energy and put it so eloquently. And I know behind the scenes, things were happening. People got in Corona and the KCEOA, and you see how all is working well together. Now, we're today going to talk about systems-inspired leadership. This is already systems-inspired leadership in action. It's really how to co-create something together, even if things go a bit differently. So thank you so much for role modeling that. It's very much an honor for me to engage with you and to talk about systems-inspired leadership. I am such a fan of this group about regenerative leadership, and this book. It's really the book Leading from the Roots from Casey. It's always there. Love the blogs, so I'm a real fan. And basically, systems-inspired leadership. It is the same, and it's a bit different. Yeah. So it's very much an expression of the same ground force, which I think could be put something like. That we want to work differently together, and create a world that is much better for all rather than for a few. So in that sense, it's very much aligned. Can you go to the next slide? You see, by the way, the book. This is the book. We published it with Marita Frijon, my co-author, in October this year. So last year. So we're very excited about it. What we want to do is I want to tell you a bit more about systems-inspired leadership. I have prepared some slides for it. please feel free to ask questions, and we would like to also create some breakout groups. So let's watch a bit the time. And I'm sure I can tell for hours about systems-inspired leadership. So let's see how we all do that in a way that serves and that is suitable for this for you. But allow me to tell you a bit more, and please ask questions if you feel so. Otherwise, there will be a quick Q&A, and then thereafter breakout groups. Is that okay? Yeah. Super. So you see here the slide about systems-inspired leadership research project. Yes, basically this approach, systems-inspired leadership, is coming from the coaching arena. I'm also a coach by background. It's coming from the organization relationship system coaching. Maybe you've heard about that, the ORSC methodology. And Marita Frijon, the co-author, is one of the co-founders of that. And basically, what happened is we did all these courses, and there was a big demand from leaders to have something for themselves, not being a coach, but be a leader. So basically, we interviewed 30 people who were ORSC trained, but also were interested or were in leadership roles. And that informed us about systems-inspired leadership. So in a way, it's a proven thing. Also, the tools work. We know it's all working. And it is in the front line. I don't know how many systems-inspired leaders there are. Formally, maybe not so much, but informally, many, many more. And it's on the rise. Yeah, so far, so good? Yes? Super. Can you then move to the next one? I always want to qualify that if we talk about systems, we talk about relationship systems. So the network, the web of relations between people. So not about information systems or whatever. And you also see here the definition we give. It's a very broad definition, a group of interdependent entities with a common focus or goal. And all these networks, the connections, the web of connections is important. It's a bit what Katie is always saying around a good ecosystem. There's collaboration. The stronger the relationships are, the easier it is to solve problems. When these connections are broken, things go wrong. And maybe you can press the button. So there is a quote, but it's not appearing, I noticed. Here it is. Instead of asking who is doing what to whom, the systems-inspired leader asks what is trying to happen. So very much more an emerging and evolving perspective. A really important, lovely question. What's trying to happen here? Can you go to the next one? This is a bit the definition. So first of all, leadership, as we define systems-inspired leadership, is a role of the system. So it's not too much, yeah, a person can have a job title leader and that's all fine. But basically the challenge is to do it all together and co-create. We have defined it as the ability to create and lead from the system, trusting that the answer is already there and waiting to be revealed. So basically, if you work well together, problems will shift. You see it differently. There's this notion of co-creation, and there's slowing down needed. Maybe you can press the button, Steph. This is one of the quotes. People say it's a different way of solving problems or conflict. There's the sense that looking at it together and reveal the system to itself will help catalyze something. And hopefully you recognize that. So if you together look at it, it looks different, and the original problem disappears because you see it from a different angle. And of course, you don't need to do this for all type of leadership issues, but if you really are in an uncertain environment and you don't know where to go, what would be a good step forward? This is a really powerful way to work. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, you all know about the VUCA world. Yeah, that's indeed why it's so needed. Yeah, we also contrast systems-inspired leadership with top-down leadership. So this is a much more robust way to deal with an environment that is changing so quickly and is so complex. And can you press again, Steph? We also want to introduce to you the word relationship systems intelligence, and it's coming up. So leaders in the past, they needed to be very smart, high IQ, that's still reasonably valid. And then in the mid-90s, particularly due to Dan Goldman, he introduced emotional intelligence and social intelligence, yeah? What got you hired is your IQ, what got you fired is your EQ. But now we need relationship systems intelligence, so really dealing with systems, ecosystems. And it's also nice, I think, the quote on the bottom, systems-inspired leadership is part of a growing trend towards a more collaborative and collective leadership models. So we are not the only one. I think regenerative leadership is also part of that movement. It's coming up all the time. That's what's trying to happen. That's what's wanting to happen. And we have some specific language around it. We have also some specific tools that we know that work. But there are also other ways, and that's all fine, because we all want to achieve the same one way or another. Let's pause here. Is there any reactions, questions, or do you want me to carry on? I carry on? Yeah, thank you. So it's just to give you a bit of sketch of where we are. So the next slide is really to give you a contrast. So, and systems-inspired leadership is not saying, hey, the old way of leading is wrong. Yeah, it's not so effective, not effective at all, but it's more include and transcend. But if you then see, and you see that on the right, what is more prominent is not the focus on the parts, the Newtonian approach, but much more the relationship system itself. Also moving from task to people and relationships, the importance of relationships. From me, really the I focus, to the system of we, or even the larger whole, the bigger ecosystem. Currently also a lot of focus on the intelligence of the head, but there's also a lot of in the body, so being present to all channels of experience. Analyzing versus sensing. Sensing is really important. What are the emotional footprints in the moment, in a system? From the known to the unknown and emergence. That's why it's so important in a VUCA world. From directing, telling to what to do, to revealing the system to itself. Just mirroring and then reframing it, reframing the issues. Leaders to leadership, reacting to creating from speed of change, speed of evolution. I hope you get a sense of what it wants to do, how it is different. And systems-inspired leadership, if you click, you also see that is a different way of leading. It is truly different. Any questions, comments, or move ahead? Yeah. One thing that we have noticed is that people find the systemic approach difficult. I know all of you are very familiar with it. You live and breathe it. And but for most people, we are so trained in the analytical approach, and we look at individuals, we look at parts. It's really difficult to see all the connections. And there are two things that make it maybe more practical. Can you press the button, Steph? The first is to see everything that's happening in a group, in a team, in a system, as a voice of the system. So here you may see on the picture, there's quite something going on in this group of people. Huh? They're angry and whatever, and maybe this man that's standing is doing a lot of bad things. But the way we, as systems-inspired leaders, look at it, that each voice is both deeply personal and the voice of the system. And basically, the bias is always to see it as a voice of the system, so not something personal. And that's really a different lens, and that may help people, and maybe you do that already yourself automatically, to really look at things much more systemically. Oh, this is coming up. That's a voice of the system. And you may recognize that in your own experience, you want to say something and then someone else says it. Basically, we look at systems as a living organism, but it cannot talk, yeah? it needs the individual members to communicate. Can you press the button? And what is very specific for systems-inspired leadership, that you also can consult the system. So with any organization, there is an integrated system, and it too has intelligence and a voice. So if you have a family system, you can also consult your family system. So what would the family think about it? I think you often do that in a bigger ecosystem, Mother Earth, yeah? We are all part of Mother Earth. What would be the voice of Mother Earth? And it's really amazing, but we human beings get information from there. We have an intuition, and that's part of our toolkit, indeed, to connect to what the system is saying. And another practical thing, that's the next slide, is every contribution that you hear, basically the rule, that's the only rule we have in systems-inspired leadership, is that everyone is right partially. And this is a very radical rule. It sounds obviously, yeah, easy in a way for words, but it's very fundamental. And the moment you look at things, hey, what could be right of what people are saying, it really changes your perspective, and it creates much more connection and curiosity already. I think this famous story about the blind Indian people exploring an elephant is part of that. One says it's a trunk. Yeah, true. Other says, no, it's a pancake. The other says, no, it's a snake. And all are right, but only partially. And if you share that with each other, you get the full picture. And certainly in a complex world, that's very important. We go with the speed of light because we are basically almost through the slides. So that's the good news. Can you go? Let's see what the quote was there. Yeah, the quote here is, adopting this rule requires personal maturity. This is not so easy. Yeah, here in Europe, we have obviously the Ukraine issue. And we all are really loading on what's happening, about what the Russians do. But maybe there's also a 2% truth there. We don't know, and be open for that. And it's difficult because it doesn't feel like that. You quickly get reactive. And I'm sure in your parts of the world, you have similar examples, yeah? It's not so easy, but important. The last slide is that that's what the book about. It's a really practical book. It gives you tools. It tries to tell what you need to do, what you could do. And that's really, for us, Marita and myself, a way to connect with a bigger target audience. Really hope that people who are in organizations, that they like this, and it's better to meet them from the doing. And we have developed, based on the interviews, 5 key competencies. And they make the Skyris model. The first is seeing, hearing, and sensing the system. So fundamental in the sense that seeing something systemic, seeing the voice of the system that we talked about, hearing the system. Just let's hear all the voices, but also sensing the emotional footprints. How engaged are people? If there's all of a sudden a silence, or there's so much unconscious emotional footprints in systems. If you really get attuned to it, it gives you a lot of information. Then at the center, the conscious and intentional relationship. It's so important. For me, for us, it's the bridge between being and doing. It positioned itself as the doing, but it needs to be connected to yourself. So what's your come from place? So for example, the systems inspired rule, everyone is right partially. That already will create an energy field. Do you want to be curious? Do you want to be playful? All these things are so important, rather than doing things unconsciously. And then the third one, revealing the system to itself. We spoke about it. It's mirroring. It's helping to people to connect basically to a bigger intuition and see things differently. That's the basic. That's on the whole horizontal. And then there is something on the top which is working with conflict to facilitate emergence. So conflict is seen as a systemic event, so not something to be scared about. Yeah, within the conflict, you have productive conflict and not productive conflict, which may end up in war, which is seen as bad, and rightly so. But conflict as such is basically an aspiration or a desire of a system that there's something better. The status quo is not good enough. And how to do that? So dealing with conflict is an important piece for systems-inspired leadership. And one of the key enablers there is systems-inspired safety. That's at the bottom. Therefore, it's basically the foundation of it all. So creating systems-inspired safety, when it's safe, if people feel they can say what they want, they not feel humiliated or being made wrong, then you get all the information needed to the surface. And so also a lot of skill is required of a leader to create that. And then maybe you can put the last, the quote we have here. So we asked many people to read it, and one of the persons, so what makes this book special is the fact that it offers practical ways on how to intervene in a system in a completely different way. I know from my own experience that the tools work. And this is not to promote the book as such, but I would like to get across, so we have not invented this from the design table. This has emerged from the ground, and it's working, and it's powerful, and it's new. It's very different. It's very different. This is basically what I wanted to say. So I'm curious what questions come up. How is this landing? And I would love to see more people. I noticed there are 15 people online. If you wish to show up with your face, that would be lovely.
Yeah, we'll stop.
Yeah, you are.
faces. There we go.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you. So what's coming up?
Yeah, what questions have come up for folks as you've been listening to Frank?
Is it clear? Help that. Give us some cues. Yeah, is it clear? Is it something that resonates? Mark, I see you nodding.
Yes, yeah, it definitely resonates. What I'm thinking sort of personally about this is that the transition to thinking is a permanent thing. It's something that I need to work on all of the time, because one can move forward. Well, I won't say one, I'll speak for myself. I can move forward and I can move backwards sometimes. So it's a framework that I need to constantly be aware of.
Okay. And what makes it challenging for you, Mark, to slip back, or not to slip back, actually?
That's a good question. I think part of it might be that when I'm working on something and I think I'm moving ahead, and then something happens that happened in the past, that my reaction will often be the way I reacted to it in the past, as opposed to thinking about, okay, I have new skills and tools and knowledge now, I can. So that's why I say I really need to be aware of how I'm using what I'm learning.
Wonderful. And maybe adding to that, we also got that from the interviews. When you are in a stressful environment, when you're under a lot of pressure, when stress gets higher, it's difficult. It's so difficult. Certainly, if you get a lot of pressure, you need to do this, then you become quickly reactive and you go back to your old to your old patterns. And then we advocate to slow down and to talk with many people. That may be the last thing you want, yeah? So that requires quite some inner strength to really do that, because in the end, it's quicker. Yeah, I see you nodding, Mark. You recognize what I'm saying, yeah? Yeah, so thank you for bringing that in.
Frank, I was thinking about this too, and I was very struck by that idea that everybody is right partially. Oh, because sometimes I want people to be so wrong. They are
Yeah.
wrong. And
Yeah.
I am right. And, and so, even what you just said about the conflict in Ukraine of like opening up, like, is there like, it's like, that is really hard too. That's very hard.
Yeah.
And like, I'm struck by that and noticing how, like, when I think about that, just how difficult it even feels to even say that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for voicing then that, Steph, and know you are a voice of the system that may be living with more people. That's what we hold. And therefore, while we present it as a doing thing, there's a lot of being development required for systems-inspired leadership. But it's also refreshing because the only thing you need to develop is being curious. So tell me more. What's your perspective? What's your data? What are your thoughts? Maybe you learned something. I think your whole learning machine is being activated. And most people actually like that. So, but we have also this reactive tendencies. Yeah. Katie, I saw you wanted to say something.
Well, when Steph said, I just sometimes want the other people to be wrong. Like it's easier if some people are right. And so we'll work with them and some people are wrong. So we can just cut them off. But this whole conversation, so it's reminding me of something I'm reading. And this whole conversation, especially the list of like where we've been and where we're going, on a fractal level, it reminds me of, is anybody familiar with this book? Is it backwards for you guys? No Bad
It's good,
Part.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's internal family systems, and you talked about the family system. Well, this book is working with all the parts inside of us, the parts that we're like, I don't even want to talk to you. You're so wrong. I don't need you. And the importance of the own internal ecosystem of bringing in all the parts, bringing in the system, hearing what they have to say, working with the conflict that exists to see what is actually wanting to happen, like with the true self. And I find it fascinating that it just feels like it's this spiral shell, that we can take this stuff that we need to work on with others in community and do it without another person within ourselves to get the practice so that when this stressful situation comes and we want to revert back to what is culturally dominant in our habits, that we've got some practice just with all those parts inside.
Yeah, so lovely the things you're saying, Katie. It resonates so well. And I think you also pointing on the system of me. So we also have parts inside that all of them we marginalize. Also some parts in ourselves, or we want to divorce them, but they're also parts of us. And it's also within families you have it, the system of me and the system of the bigger whole, all that. I think there was another thought I had when you were speaking. I think if I say everyone's right partially, there is something we always encourage people to think what's the 2% true and truth of it. And okay, you can negotiate the 1% truth, yeah, or a 0.5% truth. And obviously you don't need to agree in the end, yeah. You can still feel that something is wrong, but it's the attitude. And probably there is, if people really behave like that, in that way, from their point of view, from their context, the way they experience the world, this is right. This is logical. So what is that like? Yeah, and there is something. Maybe that's the other thing I want to say is. It is so important to create connections. The relationship is so important. Therefore, we always reinforce this notion on the web of connections. The stronger the web of connections are, the easier it becomes to solve problems, really. And that's the big drive there. Let's pause here again. So thank you, Katie, for bringing that up. Anything else?
I would like to add something, if I may.
Yes.
I've been listening as I'm driving, and perhaps some of my thoughts will be a composite of what others have been saying, but I'm struck because I'm a mediator, a facilitative method mediator. What I perceive this theory to offer is that we are asking each other for their story and recognizing that within everyone's story is their truth. And then what we're coming together to do is to find out how we connect with that, each of us in our own way, as well as encompassing others. So what I hear is that this is really very universal with a capital U. You are asking with this theory for each of us to be very conscious, and it's almost a demand for us to be aware on a continual basis of not only our own thoughts and feelings and perceptions, but that of everyone else as well. It is hard work, but I see that as being the universal part, to acknowledge, to accept, and to attempt to understand that which each of us believes and presents to the world. So it's asking all of us to be present.
Mary Ellen, I'm impressed how you've been able to capture that whilst driving. Because
yeah, well, I think it means that I'm not paying as much attention to my driving as I should be.
It's lovely you say that.
I really, I think the next step in this, I think the next step is almost the acceptance that this is a spiritual undertaking. And that's part of our ecosystem, whether that's, again, the universal process or the individual process. Okay.
Yeah, lovely. Can I give you some quick reactions? Yeah, so I think you're spot on. Yeah, and things I would like to emphasize is that if you talk with the community, yeah, we basically it's also meant for organizations or teams or families, so units that are together, something that wants to achieve something. So there's also all these voices are being listened to in order to advance the system, the thing that is the bigger whole above it. And that's also why we talk about we cultures. And it's not a we culture, we are being a servant of something, of the bigger thing, yeah. But it's really giving your voice, yeah, that everything is heard, that all the information is in the table, and then on behalf for the system. So that's a nuance. I think it's implied in what you said, Mary Ellen, but I want to emphasize that as well. So it's really taking and ultimately for our ecosystem, yeah, let's not take the universe, but to stop with the ecosystem Earth would be okay, wouldn't it? So so what could we do on behalf of that bigger system?
I think in my mind, again, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in here, but you touched on another thought that I was just having as you were talking, and that is what I think you're asking through this method is, instead of one perception or one story plus one story plus one story, I'll just stop at two. Instead of coming up with two different stories, through this, we come up with an amalgamation, which is really a third story. And that's what we're sharing, is a new direction forward.
Yeah, lovely. I think you got the essence, and I'm checking now a bit with Steph and Bonnie as well. So it seems to be a lot of energy here, but on the other side, would it be also good with this as input to do some breakout groups?
Yeah, so we have an option here, so we've got some breakout time that we can go into smaller groups, continue these conversations. We can also continue that here, but I know we've got some time to be able to do breakouts. So would you all be good with doing about 15 minutes or so and some breakout conversations, continuing this? All right, great. I'm seeing some nodding. Awesome. So we're going to send you out there. Frank, did you have some questions in particular that you were?
Yeah, maybe also, well, we prepared something, but that's just suggestions. Yeah, so you can also maybe show that on the slide, Steph.
Oh.
But the first question is, what do you like about systems-inspired leadership? And the second is, where can you apply it in your daily practice? Slide number 10, Steph. So
yep,
maybe you can put it in the chat, or yeah. But feel free to talk about whatever you want. but this could be good starting questions. And then we have 10 minutes or so to wrap up. That would be lovely.
That's great. Okay, Bonnie, are you going to be able to put us into groups?
I can assign them automatically. Would you like 3 groups or?
Let's see. Yeah, I think that would be great. Let's
okay,
do that.
I'll create them right now. And your room should all be open.
I stay here for a moment, so I don't know whether group 3, how many people are there? Bonnie, group 3? 3, so that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Could we pause the recording, or you want to?
It was great to hear your voice there for a second, Kathy.
Yeah.
So thanks. Yeah. Well,
thanks so much, Steph, for being the voice and face of our host along with Chris. So thanks.
Of course. Yeah. Well, so we have a couple minutes here. We would actually love to hear a little bit about what you discussed in your rooms, your thoughts and reflections on what Frank has shared today. So what did you talk about?
We talked about how much we appreciated Frank's fresh voice on the systems systems way of repairing broken relationships or text. I don't know if it's tools and techniques, but at least it's a higher overview of it. And maybe there's ways we can use these words in our own organizations to get people's attention in a way that we haven't been able to before.
Yeah. That's so lovely. Yeah, I'm a bit struck with the word fresh, you also say. Do you want to say more about that, Dil? What was the freshness of it?
I don't know. I've been a colleague of Kathy Allen's for a long time, learning from her about natural systems and that. And I think the simpler we can make our message, maybe the easier it is to break through to those people that we're challenged with, that are so hard-nosed or insulated in so many ways that they're not open to any side of a sort of a discussion. I mean, if you say anything that's longer than about 3 sentences put together, you can just, my experience is I see their eyes glaze over and they just tune out, and you can't get to first base with them, let alone get around the home plate. So
I think also you're pointing on the difficulty how to create this change. Also, Mary Ellen, you were talking about this spiritual undertaking in a way, or making these shifts inside. But one thing we know with this work is meeting them where they are. That's important. And small steps. It's unfortunate. Small steps. We call that in our language minimal viable edges. It's the only way to do it, step by step. But remember, if you are sailing and you change the tiller, and you do it on an ocean, you may end up in a different continent. So small things may count.
Mhm. I think the interesting thing to me is whatever is impacting in your work group or your work environment, it's a it's a ripple effect. I think it most definitely is impacting your community, and it can be the smaller community or the greater community, but it's a wonderful indicator of what's going on all around us and how much we're willing to invest in creating change.
Yeah, lovely, Mary Ellen. So in a way, the systems-inspired leadership approach is also very much more linked to quantum physics. And you know, quantum physics is the law of non-locality. So what we do here, even this conversation, will impact somewhere else in the world. And it's good, I think, to connect with it. So if you do good within your own ecosystem, this will have a ripple effect. We also have a kind of saying, step up and do what is yours to do. And maybe Dale, talking to you, it's talking to these people. And maybe that's what you have to do. And maybe one or two will shift. And that may be the trigger point in the end. Yeah. What else wants to be said, wants to be shared? Remember, you're all voices of the system. You all have wisdom.
I was really struck with everyone is right partially. I think that's a really good reframe in talking about a large system where lots of people are having different experiences, and the value in looking at those from all angles. Kind of a tweak on a stop clock is right twice a day, which I do find very helpful.
So say it again, Kathleen.
A stopped clock, even a stop clock is right twice a day.
Yeah. And in my experience, I don't know how, I think Mary Ellen, you also tried to say that by sharing that, it's not that if you share that, it's like a mathematical quotation. Oh, this is what someone says, and you add it up. But then at that moment, if you really do that in safety and safe environment, the magic is going to happen. So something will emerge that we all are amazed about. We could not create on our own. So remember that by listening to something, to someone else, and hearing all that, our perception of the problem or the issue will shift. And there's also something on a connection with people, but it's also problems come up. For me, it's magic. That's the word I use. It's a production of magic. That's maybe not the business language you want to introduce. But people love co-creation, yeah.
Frank, I was going to mention we just have a couple of minutes left. So before we close, I put in the chat that May 17th is the next call, and it's they're going to be talking about Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet with Thich Nhat Hanh, and with a special focus on connecting mindfulness and living systems, which I think should be delightful. Frank, do you have anything that you want to say before we close out over the next couple minutes, or does anybody else have anything that they'd like to share?
Yeah. Now maybe there's still something from the group that wants to be shared. We still have 2 more minutes, so I'm more curious about what you think at this stage.
Well, I'll jump in here, Frank. This is Kathy, and I just wanted to say I've been reading Frank's book, and I just find the way he's some of the practical exercises and the things that he invites us to bring into the team they're just really lovely practical things. So I really have been enjoying my reading. I'm reading it in small bites, so I highly recommend it to folks.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. So the things we do are proven in the way that it works. Yeah, and we are also part of this emerging wave of more collaborative and co-creative forms of leadership. Anyone else wants to share something?
Just very quickly, the chart of moving from thinking to feeling reminded me of, there's a scholar named Laura Rendon who teaches in the Latinx studies area, who talks about this kind of kludged together verb, senti pensante, based on sentir, to feel, pensar, to think in Spanish. And it's a story about these people who call themselves senti pensantes, like I'm a thinky feely, and that works a lot for me.
No, wonderful, thank you. It's using all these sources of information, and basically the heart probably knows so much more than our brain. That's how it is. I'm noticing it's the top of the hour. Let me say, from my perspective, it's always an adventure to see how it is to share this material with people. And you have been a lovely audience, because I feel a lot of resonance, and it's really landing well. I love that. And that's also why I love to be part of this community, because I think we are a community together that can really shift the world. And alone we can't do anything, but together, even in a small group, we can make the difference. And I think this is part of it. And thank you. It was really enjoyable, and I feel very fulfilled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay.